is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Madi Oates, ship supervisor and bargaining delegate for Starbucks Workers United, based in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Michelle Eisen, organizing member of the Starbucks Workers United, on both their big win on parental leave, which may help you get parental leave, and their authorization to strike. Then David Dayen, executive editor at the American Prospect, on the rudderless ship that is the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, the House supposedly strikes a deal on disaster aid and continuing resolution. The big victim in all this, the IRS. Benefit, of course, goes to wealthy tax dodgers. House panel reverses. It will release the Matt Gaetz report after all. Woohoo! So if you were interested in a potential job on One America Network, one may be opening up. Fed set to cut rates again. Democrats in Senate on track to match Republicans' federal judiciary appointment numbers. The Federal Trade Commission is on a tear. Lena Khan may be on the way out. They just banned junk fees on tickets, hotels, and more, and then made got a $25 million settlement from Grubhub for its harmful practices against workers and customers. Luigi Mangione, charged with terrorism in his alleged murder of the United Health CEO. Palestinians and their American families sue the State Department for failure to apply the Leahy Law. Judge rejects Trump's bid to toss 34 felonies because of his presidential immunity, because he committed those felonies when he wasn't president. American Amazon workers, at least some Teamsters, vote to authorize a holiday strike. The Supreme Court to hear that challenge to the TikTok ban January 10th. It's 9 days before the ban is supposed to go into effect, making, at the very least, my son somewhat encouraged. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Hump Day. Emma is out today. And
last Hump Day of the year.
What's that? It's the last. Yeah, it's true. It's our last live Hump Day of the year. Matt.
Sorry.
We have
I'm going to be out of here.
some amazing, we have some amazing best of compilations that we put together. But just a reminder, if you have suggestions for best of YouTube clips, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Majorityreporters@gmail.com. Put into the headline, best of. Nothing else. In the subject, I should say. Best of. And that way we will search for those, and they may end up on the best of compilations at the end of the year. And if they do, you'll be able to listen to it. That's the prize. Also, just want to say there's a big controversy. We'll probably get to it in the fun half, but big controversy about supposedly Tim Pool's been bought out by the Daily Wire.
Big con, you're saying?
What's that?
Big con, you mean?
Well, there's a lot of implications to it that I'm sure we'll spend time talking about in the coming days and weeks and whatnot. But I know that there was, having conversations with some of the folks who worked for Tim Pool when I went down there to West Virginia, that, there were cuts all over the place. And a lot of those people had picked up and moved. And if he moves his operation to Nashville, a lot of people are going to get screwed over. But
not the city that it's at, because I think generally speaking, it's not good to have Tim Pool gentrifying that part of the country. But.
I mean, there was no gentrifying going on there. All I did is put a steel fence around his, like a house so that people couldn't get in there. I don't know. But my point is, I know we have a lot of those folks who listen to the show. I know a lot. There wasn't even a lot that were working there. I met maybe half a dozen. But I was told that there are some of them, I'm just going to be vague, who do listen to the show, who are fans. And I just want to say, if there is something that you want to leak to us in confidentiality, you can send an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Majorityreporters@gmail.com, and just write in the subject confidential. And we have different ways also of getting confidential material in other ways. But I just want to invite people to, and of course that goes for any right-winger. You can always send us that kind of information. We're always happy to have it. Okay. MP, I'm not even going to read that. Somebody's trying to pick a fight with us about saying that we make fun of people and knowing obscure Star Wars facts, but I bet each of you could type out a spreadsheet of sports statistics from memory. I couldn't. I have absolutely anything I can remember, people have heard me say on the show. That's about it. That's the entirety of my memory.
Stats would be tough. I could probably place them at their colleges or something like that. But
there's a couple of stories I want to make sure we get to today, because what's going to happen to the IRS is bad. There's a bunch of bad things that are going to happen, but I want you to pay attention to the IRS one. And we have some good news on the judges front, insofar as the amount of judges that the Democrats have been able to place, and a slight revision from the deal that, and if they did this on purpose, gosh, that's completely out of character. But Schumer had made a deal with McConnell. There were they were anticipating 4 circuit court judges. Circuit courts, Court of Appeals, that's like the next step below the Supreme Court. Obviously, very important branch of the judiciary. And then they had maybe, I don't know, I'm going to say a dozen and a half district court judges vacancies. And those are subsidiary to the circuit courts, not as important, but they are lifetime appointments. And they ultimately, often will get into the circuit courts. And so Schumer said, well, I will trade you, because they're going to try and block the circuit court judges. We won't fill those. We'll just fill the district court judgeships. And McConnell said, okay. And then at least now, one of the circuit court judges who was set to retire, opening up that vacancy, which would have been Trump's to fill, said, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to retire, just coincidentally. And now the Republicans are saying that this seems like it might be unethical. I don't even need to say anything else. All right, let's get into this. The supposed big story today is that the House has come to a deal on a continuing resolution. And this may ultimately, we'll see. I mean, I don't know how serious these people are, and we're certainly looking and finding out what's happened to Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz did a, so-called force the vote move, and he's about to lose basically his ability to get hired anywhere except for his dad because of it. This is the type of vengeance they take out. On some level, we saw this type of vengeance that Nancy Pelosi exercised on AOC just yesterday. Pelosi was still angry about AOC protesting in her office, and from her, convalescence bed in wherever it is, Monaco or Monaco, resting from a hip surgery, was whipping the vote against AOC in favor of a guy with esophageal cancer at age 74. Politicians are very vindictive. That's the way they get to where they are more often than not. Matt Gaetz is about to find that out the hard way. Nevertheless, the continuing resolution, the dynamic here is that if the Republicans could all agree on what they wanted, they'd be able to bring it up to they would go through committee. And once it goes through committee, this is all just obscure parliamentary procedure. Once it goes through committee, it's passed on committee, then it could go up for a 50-50 vote, essentially, or, just a majority vote in the House. That's the way the House works. But if you cannot pass it through the committee, you need to go around in a different process, which then requires, is it a 2/3, I think, or 3/4 of vote for passage? In other words, more than the Republican Party, you need Democratic buy-in. And the Democrats agreed, or Jeffries put on the table, we will vote for this continuing resolution if we get another $100 billion worth of disaster aid, if you agree to use federal funds to rebuild the bridge in Baltimore that fell, and a couple of other things. One of the things they didn't do was fix the IRS funding. You will recall Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer made a garbage deal about, I guess it was a year ago, where they allowed the Republicans to claw back $20 billion from over $40 billion that were specifically for auditing wealthy people in terms of taxes, essentially. And the $20 billion would have been spread out over a long period of time. Not, a big deal, but not that big of a deal in the short run. That was in the budget last year. When you do a continuing resolution, all you're saying is, we're just going to do that again. And if you don't take out that provision that cuts $20 billion from the IRS, then it's in there again, and it's in there again. But nevertheless, there are Republicans who are pissed about this whole continuing resolution thing, because they want to cut whatever possible. And Mike Johnson's in between a rock and a hard place. Doesn't want to be responsible for a government shutdown. And here he is going to Fox and Friends with his tail between his legs. And of course, who does he respond to? Well, we know who the president-elect is. And maybe you'll be surprised to find out who his name is.
We don't have a choice. We have to fund those. We have to fund FEMA. We have to fund our farmers.
Right. And Mr. Speaker, it's not just, so you've got a bunch of Republicans who are angry at you. They don't like this. And just in a couple of weeks, you're going to stand once again to run for Speaker of the House. And you don't need a bunch of Democrats mad at you. But and this is breaking news you do not know. You know who also does not like this? Elon Musk, the world's richest man, just tweeted, this bill should not pass. The only way you're going to be able to pass it now, Mr. Speaker, is with Democrats. If you could, what's your message to Elon Musk?
Well, I was communicating with Elon last night. Elon and Vivek and I are on a text chain together, and I was explaining to them the background of this. And Vivek and I talked last night about.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. And, do we know when that Elon tweeted that out?
Ducey was saying that was like breaking that while they were.
Oh, interesting. So Mike is saying that he talked to them last night. Now, listen, I know a lot of you may have like an issue, like why is
what elections did those guys win?
Yeah, they were voted richest men in America. Okay. But apparently Elon's pissed even the next day. I mean, this is all. I don't even know if it's palace intrigue, but it's fascinating just how Who's in the palace?
The buzz wore off.
The Elon and Vivek are really adamant about not letting non-elected government bureaucrats make decisions about our government.
It was a tweet at 4:15 a.m. this morning.
Ooh, gosh. And now maybe at 4:20 a.m. Mike Johnson was on his Twitter, his like a DM chain with them, but I find that hard to believe.
If you could, what's your message to Elon Musk?
Well, I was communicating with Elon last night. Elon and Vivek and I are on a text chain together, and I was explaining to them the background of this. And Vivek and I talked last night about almost midnight, and he said, look, I get it. He said, we understand you're in an impossible position. Everybody knows that. Remember, guys, we still have just a razor-thin margin of Republicans, so any bill has to have Democrat votes. They understand the situation. They said, it's not directed to you, Mr. Speaker, but we don't like the spending. I said, guess what, fellas? I don't either. We got to get this done because here's the key. By doing this, we are clearing the decks, and we are setting up for Trump to come in roaring back with the America First agenda. That's what we're going to run with gusto beginning January 3rd when we start the new Congress, when Republicans, again, are in control. And all of our fiscal conservative friends, I'm one of them, will be able to finally do the things that we've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. Right now, Democrats still control the pens, and that's the problem. So we got to get this thing.
Who's in the majority in the House right now? Is it Democrats? Oh, that's weird.
Right now, Democrats still control the pens, and that's the problem. So we got to get this thing done.
Still control fences? What did he say? Just go back a little bit, because I'm really curious at what he's trying to say. The Democrats control.
We'll be able to finally do the things that we've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. Right now, Democrats still control the pens, and that's the problem. So we got to get this thing done.
One more time, Bradley.
Democrats control Pence?
Democrats still control
Temps?
To finally do the things that we've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. Right now, Democrats still control the pens, and that's the problem. So we got to get this thing done so we don't have the shutdown, so we get the short-term funding measure, and we get to March where we can put our fingerprints on the spending. That's when the big changes start, and we can't wait to get there.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wait, could you go back over again? Democrats control pens?
Yeah, sorry. I'm doing the closed captioning here, and I have a point of clarification.
Democrats control
Democrats control pens.
You know what? You know what it sounds like to me? Democrats should have also, if they control finance, they should have gotten that funding back for the IRS. Democrats really.
Democrats control pens.
This is.
Oh, they got the pens. I think they have control of the pens.
Oh, the pens.
Democrats control the pens.
They don't control the pens.
Apparently, Pelosi.
They don't control the
Schumer
pens.
Got them cornered.
Democrats control my phone. I take it from my son. Folks, we got a couple of sponsors of today's program. End of the year, you're looking for opportunities to donate. Well, GiveWell is a nonprofit that researches and recommends giving opportunities. Takes the impact of donations seriously. They make recommendations which withstand tough scrutiny. GiveWell had their own researchers spend months trying to identify flaws in their past work. And then they publish their findings, mistakes and all, for any donors to use for their giving. This kind of rigor that can help your donation make a big impact in the world. It really is amazing. They literally have a vertical on their page that is like every mistake that they've ever made in the existence of this organization. They have GiveWell spent over 17 years researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found. Over 125,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $2 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests these donations are going to save over 200,000 lives. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high impact giving. And like I say, you can find all of their research and recommendations on their site. And here's the thing, it's free. And not only is it free, if you make a tax-deductible donation to one of their recommended funds or charities, GiveWell does not take a cut. Every dollar that you donate through GiveWell goes to the charities that they have recommended. The Globe called GiveWell the gold standard for giving. Here are some examples of what donations to GiveWell's recommended charities can achieve. One is bed nets to prevent malaria. Costs about $5 to provide one net. Nets can reduce the number of malaria infections. Enough nets and a large enough drop in infections can save a life in expectation. Never mind, like, sort of the knock-on effects of this. Also, and this is the one that I donate to, costs about $155 to vaccinate an infant. This charity provides cash incentives for routine childhood vaccinations. The funding provides cash transfers. It incentivizes caregivers to bring babies to clinics, for these routine childhood vaccinations, which of course prevent disease, reduce child mortality. And also, there's a lot of data that shows that, with people living in poverty and extreme poverty, they know best how to deploy their funds. So there's a knock-on value to this as well. If you've never used GiveWell to donate, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as those matching funds last. Claim your match. Go to givewell.org, pick podcast, enter Majority Report Sam Seder at checkout. Make sure they know you heard about GiveWell from the Majority Report, and that will get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more. Put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions, as well as at majority.fm. Also sponsoring the program today, something that can both reduce your anxiety and take care of your family. It's called SelectQuote, because there's a ton, obviously, that are out of our control. One way in which you can regain control, and also sort of that nagging anxiety that you should be doing this in terms of protecting your family's financial future, go buy some life insurance through SelectQuote. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers. They have almost 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. I can tell you, it took me a little bit of time when Milo was born to buy a term life policy. When I did, it was a huge relief. It would be even greater relief. I don't need to use it, but in the event that I do, she and her mom do. And then when Saul was born, I bought another smaller policy just to cover, because I had 2 kids at that point. And I got smart. I was like, I might as well just do this because I got to get it done. And if you've ever worried about getting coverage with a pre-existing health condition for life insurance, SelectQuote partners with carriers that provide policies for a variety of health conditions. High blood pressure? No problem. Diabetes? No problem. Even if you have heart disease, SelectQuote partners with carriers that can cover those conditions and others. And if you don't have any major health issues, they work with carriers that can get you same-day coverage with no medical exam required. Head to SelectQuote.com, and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with your right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/majority. Go to SelectQuote.com/majority today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/majority. Link in the podcast and YouTube description. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Madi Oates, shift supervisor, bargaining delegate for Starbucks Workers United. And then Michelle Eisen, organizing member of Starbucks Workers United, will be with her. We're going to be talking about this paid parental leave win, and to the extent that we can, what's going on with the potential of another Starbucks strike. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Real pleasure to welcome back to the program Michelle Eisen. She's an organizing member of the Starbucks Workers United. I think we've spoken, I think we were just saying, this is our third time, and we've spoken through the different stages of your unionization process. And Madi Oates, shift supervisor and bargaining delegate for Starbucks Workers United, based in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Guys, welcome to the program. Madi, let's start with you, because this is, and then we can go to Michelle, who I know is also about to literally jump back into negotiations. But tell us about this big win for parental paid leave. This seems like a big deal.
Yeah, this is a huge deal. When I woke up yesterday morning and my phone was blowing up with news of this groundbreaking change for the entire company, I mean, it was amazing. But that started with us. A month ago, we brought this forward to the company, what their current policies are. Retail workers such as us that work in the stores, we only got paid 6 weeks paid maternity leave, 8 weeks for cesarean section, and up to 12 weeks unpaid time, where non-retail workers such as corporate, they already were receiving the 18 weeks of paid leave. So we brought this forward to them at the table, and we were like, you know, we all deserve this. Like, what makes your child more important than mine? So waking up yesterday with the feeling that they heard us at the table, they made this change for all workers, and it's amazing. The best feeling ever, really.
I mean, that's a huge win. I mean, it's also, you know, I guess when you phrase it that way to them, they're like, it's sort of hard to justify why the executives, who probably also have the ability to have the money to hire, help in a way that workers may not in terms of their kids. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Michelle, before we start talking about like sort of the other aspects of what's going on right now, that's going to be a big deal. I mean, if Madi's going to be able to get a paid parental leave for 18 weeks, and I believe it's like spouses and partners can get it for 12, if they're not the one to have actually to have the child, this is going to be a big deal, not just for people working at Starbucks. I got to imagine if I'm, I don't know, across the street at, whatever it is, Joe's Coffee, or I'm working at the supermarket or wherever, I'm going to be looking to this and saying, like, wait a second, if they can afford to do this, why can't we afford to do this?
Yeah, I mean, this should change the standard across the board, especially for service workers. I mean, the fact that it's not like, this is not to demean anybody's profession or anybody's job, but when you do what we do daily, it's not like you're having a child and then you get 6 weeks paid leave and then you go back to your desk job, where at the very least you get to like sit. It is a very physically demanding job that we're asking these new parents to come in and do right after they've, birthed a child or multiple children, or, had a cesarean section or anything like that. So absolutely, at the very least, we need that extra time. These are not jobs. These are not stores where it is easy to come back from having a child. I know that Madi also has stories about, her ability to pump milk in a place in the store once she returned to work, and the fact that the company, that space couldn't be provided for her. I think we have to look at new parents as from the business standpoint of bringing new parents back into the workforce and how we can support them. That should be a priority. And it looks like, at least with this recent change, that Starbucks is starting to view that and understand. And this was a win for every Starbucks worker. Yes, it was. We are absolutely taking credit for this. Madi sat across the table a month ago from the company and highlighted the fact that there was a huge disparity between what corporate members received in support after having a child and what us hourly workers received. And then lo and behold, the company's like, oh, we're going to give this to everybody. Great. We're glad that everybody got it. But, credit should be due to the union for highlighting that and bringing it to the forefront of these conversations.
And we'll get back to this in a minute, but I imagine it's not a coincidence in terms of like the timing of both the strike authorization vote and the bargaining that's going on. But Madi, give me a sense of to the extent that you may have experienced coming back early after having a kid, or coworkers, just for those who don't have a sense of what that's like. I mean, because it's not a situation where you're at a desk. Again, all due respect, I sit at a desk. You have the opportunity I'm going to take 5 minutes to, I can change the pace of my work. If you're working at Starbucks, you have no control over the pace or being able to take a random break when you need it in that moment. And having been a parent twice over myself, you get no sleep and you're exhausted. But tell me your experience.
Yeah, I can speak to this very well. So last year, as I organized my store to unionize, I was pregnant with my third daughter. And I had to deal with union busting left and right. We won our election. We demanded more hours. The company cut my hours. As a full-time worker for over 5 years at this point, I was working 36 to 40 hours plus a week and was cut down to 20, 22 hours. My ability never changed at work. Sure, I slowly got bigger, but I always came to work and performed above and beyond for my team. I was forced to work 2-man plays, which is when there's only 2 people working the entire store. I was still performing full duties, lifting heavy ice, lifting mats to clean floors. I gave birth a year ago today. Today's my daughter's first birthday, and I'm here.
Happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday, Fox. So I was working during the holiday season, though, which is one of our busiest times of year. I had to go on my maternity leave early due to health complications. I was injured when I had my daughter. They messed my epidural up twice. So the 6 weeks I was given by the company just wasn't enough. I thankfully saved all my vacation time for the year, and took an extra 2 weeks off with my daughter. So I got 2 months with her. With a back injury, coming back to work, full duties. I was also trying to, pump for my daughter, and the only place in my building that had a locking door was my bathroom. So I was not going to be pumping milk for my daughter out of our bathroom, I also wasn't given the space or the time to be able to take breaks that I needed to be able to do this for my daughter. So, it's rough coming back to work, but if I would have had this experience of 18 weeks, I feel the whole experience would have been different. I could have focused on healing and actually being able to take the time to go to the doctor to get help, establishing a full pumping routine for my daughter. It would have brought such a better experience for myself. So it's empowering knowing that all workers have this opportunity now.
Michelle, I want you to give us a little bit of an update about what's happening in terms of negotiation to the extent that you can. But first, the idea of Madi talking about this stuff, and I don't know, maybe Madi's planning on having a fourth kid, but this is a benefit that's going to people that she may not benefit from, but she's out there fighting for it just based upon her experience. I mean, that is sort of the seems to me to be the sort of the fundamental building block of of what the union does just in general.
Yeah, I mean, that is the labor movement, right? It is fighting for rights for all of the working class, whether or not you may personally have an opportunity to benefit from it, because providing for all of us raises all of us up, right? And yes, all Starbucks workers are receiving this benefit, and we wouldn't want it to be any other way. We would not have wanted this amazing benefit to just go to the union workers. However, the union workers are the only ones who are protected from having that benefit taken away, right? If in 2 years the company reassesses and decides this is just too expensive for us to keep providing this level of leave for all of our workers, they can come and they can take that away, but they can't take that away from the union workers. That's the difference between having a union contract and having those rights preserved in that contract and not having a union contract. Do we hope that that's a decision that Starbucks makes? No, we don't. But we've seen it happen before. I've been with the company 14 years. I can tell you that there are benefits that the company offered when I started that they do not offer anymore because we didn't have a union, we didn't have them preserved in a contract, and they were able to come in and make those changes. We are trying to prevent that from happening in the future.
I think the first time we spoke, there may have been a dozen members of the union. How many Starbucks workers are now unionized a couple years later? And then tell us about what those workers have authorized and where you're at to the extent that you can in these negotiations. I know that you literally have to go there in about 5 minutes.
Maddie and I are both bargaining delegates for our stores. I am store number 1. So I think probably the first time we talked, it was maybe around that time. This was 3 years ago. We just hit the 3-year milestone on December 9th. I believe Maddie's store was number 385 or somewhere around there. And as of today, I think we're at 529. I don't know if you heard the news, but our latest store to join the union is located in Starbucks headquarter building in Seattle. We won that store yesterday.
That's fun.
We're over 10,000 members. So there are over 10,000 unionized Starbucks workers as of today. Just slightly over 3 years from when we won that first store. And just this year alone, we've organized over 150 new stores, since January 1st of 2024.
And how many more stores are left? Like how many more, if there's 10,000 that have now unionized, how many are extant?
Well, that's 10,000 workers. So
10,000 workers, right.
529 stores. There's a lot of stores in the U.S. alone. I think there's, just under 9,000. Wow. So the union represents about 5% of the retail workers in the U.S., which is not an inconsequential number, but it's a percentage. I think what we've seen and what is still unbelievably hopeful and shocking to me every single day is that more workers choose to join this fight. They recognize how important it is to be a member of a union, to be able to stand up with your workers. For years, we watched the company come in and change policy. There were never hourly workers at the tables or in the rooms where these decisions were being made. And for the first time, we have an opportunity to do just what Maddie did, to sit across the table from the people making the decisions and highlight our needs and watch them be addressed. And I think Starbucks workers are saying, yeah, we need that. We absolutely need that. We know how to run these stores better than anybody because we're the ones doing it. And so our voices absolutely matter when we're talking about practice and policy and everything that goes into doing our job and to making the company successful, right? The company needs to invest in its hourly workers because we invest so much in the company and we are the ones making it run, keeping it successful, keeping it, at the top. It is, you think coffee and you think Starbucks. There's no, it's very rare for someone to say, I'm going to go get a coffee, and for you not to immediately think, oh, they're probably going to Starbucks. So it's important that the company recognizes our value.
And so what, just give me the broad strokes of the parameters, what is being negotiated right now? I know there's been a strike authorization that was voted. I think it was announced today or the results of that election. Or I should say that vote. What are the just broad stroke parameters to the extent that you can talk about it? Because like I say, I know both you guys are involved in these negotiations.
Yes, I will. I just got the signal that we're going to have to wrap. So I will go into all of that to the best of my ability. 98% of our members did vote to authorize a strike if necessary. We are still in bargaining with the company. We've been bargaining for months. Both parties are showing up. We're very proud of the progress on both sides in terms of the non-economic things that have been addressed. Without going into any details, we are ecstatic about a lot of the non-economic things that have been already settled to the best of, how that works in bargaining. But the company needs to show up with a comprehensive economic proposal package, and they need to settle the hundreds of unfair labor practice charges that are still standing. You know, when the company came to us in February and said, we're gonna turn over a new leaf, we want to work together on this foundational framework that's, you know, all these stores can then vote on in their contract. Part of the deal was that all of the outstanding litigation also be settled, and there's a lot of outstanding litigation in the form of unfair labor practices. But they've also invested this year. You know, we've seen them invest in the company. We have this new CEO. His compensation package is the equivalent of about $57,000 an hour, which is about 10,000 times more an hour than the average barista makes. And we would like to see that investment in the baristas. You know, like I said, we're the ones who make everything run. We're very proud to do that, but we need to acknowledge the value of our labor and our work within this company. So that's where we are right now. We need them to come with a comprehensive economic package that is acceptable and shows our value within the company, and we need this outstanding litigation to be settled so that we can all move forward together in a partnership, which is what both sides truly do want, I believe.
Lastly, if I'm working at a Starbucks right now and my shop is not unionized, how do I go about doing that?
We are very, very, very active on social media. Our Twitter, I think it's SB Workers United for our Instagram, and our Twitter. If you still do Facebook, we've got a Facebook page as well. And then we've got our website, our Starbucks Workers United website, which has all of that information. You just have to reach out, and anyone would be more than happy to get that process started.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much. Madi Oates, Michelle Eisen, congrats on the paid parental leave. That's a great thing to have happen and you've done it for literally tens of thousands of people across the country. And it's going to like I say, it's going to have a knock-on effect. I'm convinced in other businesses. Appreciate the work. Appreciate you guys coming on. I know you got to get back to work and negotiating this. But we will put links to all those things you mentioned at majority.fm and in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And in a moment, we'll be talking to David Dayen, executive editor at the American Prospect. He just wrote a piece pointing out that the Democratic Party seems to have a rudderless ship, or be a rudderless ship at the moment. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Majority Report. Emma Vigeland off today. Joining me now, the executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen. David, let me just congratulate you on your latest contract hire. Joe Biden apparently wrote an article for you. Is that right?
He's some guy he says going to be out of a job soon and needed something to do. And, you know, he wanted to get some writing in, maybe see if he could, polish up his chops on that front.
Doing a little resume padding while he still has the juice.
Something like that.
to his credit.
I mean, if you want the truth, we got a call from the White House. They were interested in placing this. You might have seen today, the president did an interview with More Perfect Union and Fez. It's interesting that they get a clue on this, after the election. But I mean, I think during the election there was not much interest on the part of the current Democratic campaign that was running to have Joe Biden out there doing much of anything, frankly. But Democrats certainly have a lot to learn with the communications side of things, and maybe that's that.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I understand why they didn't want Joe Biden out there, because, Biden was unpopular and, not necessarily like, the most, showing the most amount of vigor and communicating, but how much of like what Harris campaign was a function of sort of the Biden world? And if this is like what the Biden world, if they're coming not to, I don't know. I mean, there are other publications they could go to there that are more conservative in some respect. They could have, Joe Biden could have decided to, write on Matt Iglesias' Substack, and I can understand Matt Iglesias is a little upset about it that it didn't happen. But and instead of talking to Faz at More Perfect Union, Faz Shakir was Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, and is and certainly when the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, they could have theoretically gone to Morning Joe or something. I mean, so and they have nothing. Joe Biden's not going to run for another office. I don't think that's a news flash. So there's some like actual, sort of set of beliefs there. Would they have the mind that like this was problematic for the American public? Like, I don't understand how they're operating here.
I mean, I think what's going on right now is that Joe Biden is trying to think about his own legacy and put forward some sort of coherent agenda for what he accomplished and why he thinks it matters. And I think it's important to hear from leaders when they want to do something like that. So we were happy to run it.
Right.
I think there's an inward focus there that has to be understood. He's not necessarily doing this to. I mean, maybe in some respects he's doing it to lay down a marker so that what happens in the next administration, there's at least a clear, it's contrast. Clear what he did and a contrast. So, I mean, in that respect, I think there's some potential value to it, but I think the lack of it's the same problem that Democrats have in elections, where they knock on doors for 2 weeks every 4 years and expect people to know, what the party stands for. They know maybe in those 2 weeks, but there's a whole other part of the calendar where they're not doing a lot of communicating with people. And here we have this version of it is, presidents do some sort of legacy essay summarizing their agenda. It's sort of the written version of a presidential library, right? It's just that their version of history.
I get that. I get the impetus, but I guess my point is like he clearly wants to be seen as having done like progressive things economically, and at the very least. And it's like, okay, why did your vice president run like halfway towards that's the part that I'm talking about.
I mean, what you're talking about is really, I'm on here to talk about this story about the rudderless ship of the Democratic Party that I wrote. And I think that this plays, very well into that there wasn't, I mean, the incoherence of the Harris campaign to simultaneously say, I'm going to be very different from Joe Biden. And also, I can't think of one thing I would do differently from Joe Biden. is in many ways encapsulates this problem, that there isn't sort of a core set of principles or beliefs. It's all kind of a grab bag. And I appreciated the Biden essay, but it is a bit of a laundry list, right? It's trying to fashion some things together into that sort of backwards engineer this coherent purpose onto it. But look, I mean, Democrats want to do a whole lot more than what Biden ended up doing. This is what he got through, and now he's trying to place kind of a coherent framework on top of it.
All right, let's talk about this rudderless ship because, I'm thinking back to 2 weeks after Barack Obama won the election and Mitch McConnell gathers everybody in his office and says, we are going to, under no circumstance are we going to give this guy a win. And that was it. I mean, there was like 1 or 2 days of like, well, this is, great that he won, historic, blah, blah, blah. And then after everybody got back from their brief vacations, they're like, okay, we're done. We're not cooperating. And we will feel the impact of that strategy, tactics for decades. I mean, the last part of it, of course, being that third, that seat that they denied Barack Obama on the Supreme Court that, is now the number 6 out of a 6-3 majority. But we have nothing even remotely analogous to that on the Democratic side. And you, we'll get to that point about like, we have people retire and then stick around to sort of continue to mess with stuff.
Right. Yeah. So, it's what you're talking about is called being an opposition party, right? And Democrats certainly have never done that with the sort of brazenness of a Mitch McConnell. The quote I use just from that same period in 2009 in the piece is how he said, we wanted to make sure that nothing was bipartisan, because if it looks bipartisan, then people think that everything's been worked out already and there's not this great debate happening in the country. So we worked very hard to keep our fingerprints off of all of Obama's policies. That's what McConnell said in 2009. Flash forward to 2024, and you have a bunch of Democrats on very discrete policies saying, hey, maybe I'll work on improving the food system. Hey, maybe I'll work on reducing defense spending. Hey, maybe I'll work on this, that, or the other thing, all of which may be noble pursuits, but it certainly doesn't hew to this idea that there's a great debate going on. And I think that the real problem is there's no one with the stature of Mitch McConnell to say, here's how it's going to be. There's nobody within the party that has any kind of respect to enact a strategy and get people to go along with it. And so in the absence of that, you have just a bunch of Democrats freelancing, whether they are saying, okay, maybe I can make progress on my issue, or maybe they're saying, all right, I'm just trolling Donald Trump to the point that when he actually fails, then I can say, see, I tried, I offered the olive branch, and they didn't take it up because they believe in this, that, or the other thing. I think that you get this sense that there's no opposition party, but just 200 people in Washington pursuing their own agendas because there is no leadership in the party right now.
I was particularly sort of struck by your description of how the leadership, Pelosi, Hoyer, Clyburn, stepped aside and then didn't step aside. I mean, this is like, I've
never seen this before. It was almost seen as a given. It was almost seen as a given that when you lost an election and you were House Speaker and the party, the opposition party took over, that you would resign. Like that was actually a tradition until Nancy Pelosi. that, in 2006, the Republicans lose the House and Dennis Hastert resigns because he lost the House on his watch. Same with
fun fact, of course, he went on to be indicted and imprisoned for being a child molester. But I mean,
other than that, but the point is that I could go back through non-child molesters, former speakers throughout history, who resigned when their party lost an election. And Nancy Pelosi didn't do that. And not only didn't she do that, she decided not to resign, even though she wasn't the leader of the Democratic Party anymore. And they made up this title, Speaker Emeritus, for her. And she continues to work behind the scenes, moving pieces on a chessboard as if she's in power. And, this really comes to a head with these challenges to the ranking Democrats on various committees. It was very clear to me that Hakeem Jeffries was supportive of the effort to get younger in these committee chairmanships
and we should just
ranking Democrat.
Just the context of this, of course, is that we had Dianne Feinstein, who over her last years as chair of the Judiciary Committee, was hugging Lindsey Graham and sat on potential. Sat on the accusations against Kavanaugh for like months and months and months, really completely mishandled that entire thing. In a way that was,
I think the larger context is Joe Biden. We
Joe
literally
Biden
had to get
Ruth
rid of
Bader
our
Ginsburg. I mean, yeah.
So, we have this gerontocracy problem within the Democratic Party. And I think Jeffries was really supportive of it. He was silent, but it was clear what was going on. Like he had no problem encouraging, or at least not discouraging, younger members to challenge some of those committee chairs. The problem is that Pelosi got involved and put her thumb on all of it. And it's not just and it didn't matter what side she put it on. Pelosi had a long-standing beef with Gerald Nadler. It goes all the way back to when Nadler beat Zoe Lofgren to take over the Judiciary Committee when John Conyers died. And she saw her opportunity amid this youth movement to stick the knife in Gerald Nadler. And so she did. And she promoted, she gave the blessing to Jamie Raskin to take over that committee. And it was a bloodless coup. Nadler steps down because he sees the writing on the wall. There was another committee, David Scott, who's barely mobile, the head of the House Agriculture Committee, wasn't able to engage in key actions around the Farm Bill and things like that. Pelosi picked Jim Costa and said, we want Jim Costa to be the chair over Angie Craig. Angie Craig ends up actually winning that fight. But once again, there's this personality set of conflicts that Pelosi is moving towards. And then finally, there's the AOC situation where ever since AOC got to Congress and held a protest in Pelosi's office, she's clearly had it in for her. And so in the midst of this alleged youth movement, she backs Gerald Connolly, who's 74 and going through esophageal cancer right now, and chooses him over the 35-year-old AOC for oversight committee chair, and actually seems to do the most work in organizing the caucus to back Connolly, even though she's like convalescing from a broken hip in Luxembourg, that she fell down a marble staircase or something. And she does it, and Connolly gets the job. And it's like, it's so infantilizing to Hakeem Jeffries to have this, behind the scenes machinations going on with this Cardinal Richelieu figure who can't give up power and has to be at the center of all of these, whatever pursuits that she has. It's really, how can anyone in the Democratic caucus know who the actual leader of the House Democrats is under these circumstances.
That's I mean, of the many problems. But let's just back up, at least in terms of like, Connolly, and my understanding is that he's a very vigorous 74-year-old with esophageal cancer. As far as people with esophageal
that's a direct
cancer,
quote.
I know
that's a direct quote from Representative Don Beyer of Virginia, who said he's a youthful 74, notwithstanding the cancer. Like, I'm not making up that quote. That's what he said.
What is the nature of that committee? Like, I mean, what is it? Particularly if you're in the and we should say the guy who said that quote himself was 74. So, you have a way of assessing, right? Like, because he's like, relative to me, I'm exhausted all the time. I don't even know what I'm still doing here. But he,
right.
But tell us about that committee, because this committee is like, if you were to genetically create a minority leader of that committee, or, it seems to me that everything that you would create would be AOC from the perspective of an opposition party.
Right. I mean, the Oversight Committee has a very wide jurisdiction. Not only can it look at government actions and the operations of the Trump administration, but it also can look at things happening in corporate America and elevate those issues. We've seen drug prices come up in the Oversight Committee. We've seen defense contractors come up in the Oversight Committee, and on down the line. Now, the minority, sort of the ranking opposition member, doesn't have the ability to completely set the agenda in that committee, but several things on that. One, they can elevate issues. They can include witnesses in hearings that the majority decides to hold. They can hold investigations from the minority and try to get documents from people and put out investigations that on various topics. And most important, I think, from the AOC perspective, they can use new media to set the agenda within that committee. And when if and when the Democrats win back Congress, the ranking member would get elevated to the chair position and then would have even more ability to set the agenda. And so, one of the problems, I think, with Democrats is that they don't see the tools of Congress as viable to communicate with the American people on what their job is. And oversight is one of those key ways in which you can really make noticeable what's happening in the country. One of those famous oversight hearings was Henry Waxman bringing in the CEOs of the tobacco companies who said nicotine is not addictive. And, he was able to create a tableau in that way that led to a huge master settlement and hundreds of billions of dollars and massive improvements in public health. That came out of a hearing. And that could happen again if Democrats had someone who was smart and able to work the modern communication system to get attention.
Before we judge, my understanding is that Connolly has a whole operation where he sends out postcards and reports on what's going on. He's got a huge snail mail list of thousands of people where he sends out postcards. I mean, it's insane. It really is insane because.
But I mean, it's more insane because, look, I mean, I'm sure Jerry Connolly has been kind of a loyal foot soldier to Nancy Pelosi. And, Jerry Connolly isn't terrible. He's generally been a pretty good voice in that committee. But the fact that this is all driving on one member's personality conflict, that this is really about who Nancy Pelosi thinks is worthy of certain positions and who she thinks isn't. And it cuts even both ways, whether that means somebody older or somebody younger. That's the problem, that this is what a self-appointed leader of the Democratic Party is spending their time on, rather than how to deal with Donald Trump and how to deal with the near-term challenges of vulnerable people that we're going to have coming up real soon.
And And the point, I think it's also important to emphasize. I mean, you said this, but I think it's really important to emphasize this. It is kneecapping Jeffrey's ability to be a leader. I mean, he's not my favorite ideologically speaking, but I want the leadership to be effective. And this is kneecapping. Like, it's basically saying it's every person for themselves here. And you don't have to pay attention to leadership. And here's the other thing I would add. Pat Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, was the one who did the opening speech for AOC.
He was one of them, yeah.
Pat Ryan, I think more than any other Purple District congressperson, had a bigger delta between himself and Harris. And there's some things he does that I appreciate. He's up in the 18th district in sort of the Hudson Valley area. If he is not nervous about going out there and associating himself with AOC, he understands. I don't think they're ideologically, they're not at loggerheads, but they're not in lockstep. He's not a member of the squad.
Right.
But if he understands the value of this, it's just, are there other, is there a sense, and I know I saw a piece that said, people are saying, well, AOC will be in the leadership, soon enough and blah, blah, blah. She needs more seasoning, whatever it is. But is there a sense that is there a cohort of people in the House, in the Democratic caucus who are saying this is just effed up? Is there enough of them going this is just not how you run an effective organization? You don't have somebody who has resigned undercutting nobody would run an organization like this.
I think there are people like that. Maybe it's Pat Ryan, maybe it's Chris DeLuzio in Pennsylvania, maybe it's, other people. I do think that we're going to see some factions emerge that are going to speak to this crisis of leadership. But that's what happens in a leadership vacuum. And it breeds people freelancing, and it also breeds people trying to take advantage of it. And some of that might be good because somebody has to take the reins of the party. And some of that might be, the kind of things that we talked about with this memo from this Democratic fundraiser and venture capitalist Seth London, who wants to create a new DLC. Which is the Democratic Leadership Council, which was the centrist lurch to the right that led to Bill Clinton. Leadership vacuums aren't completely anomalous in the Democratic Party, right? After 2004, John Kerry lost and kind of stepped aside, and there was nobody really around that could rally the troops. I think it's worse now. For all the reasons that we've described. I mean, Kamala Harris is socked away somewhere in California deciding whether she's going to run for governor or not. Biden is leaving the public stage. The past presidents, Barack Obama is like a movie and book influencer who sometimes comes back to give a speech every 4 years.
What about Jimmy Carter?
Chuck Schumer.
What about Jimmy Carter?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't? Because
exactly.
Right now, why wouldn't you include Jimmy Carter based upon the leadership that we've had so far?
Seriously, but Schumer doesn't really inspire that. Even on the progressive side, Bernie Sanders said, "This is my last campaign." Elizabeth Warren, it's probably her last campaign, what she ran this year. So there isn't anyone really out there that has that juice, that has that gravitas to say, we're going to sit people down and here's what we're going to do. And I think the other part of this is that you don't always need a leader if you have the principles, right? If you have just sort of a massive
the Democratic Party
principle.
never is, super aligned. It seems to me, that's sort of famously a big tent and multi-coalitional. I think the difference
one of the big things we're missing in the Democratic Party is the decline, dissolution of the Democratic Study Group. Democratic Study Group was, for many years and decades in Congress, was sort of an in-house think tank that generated policy, generated ideas that could be not only turned into legislation, but actually run on as this is what the Democratic Party stands for. And in the absence of that, you have a bunch of silos that come in from the outside. They only look at their narrow issues.
And we don't have anything like that.
And they grab the attention of various individuals because there is no sort of official, the platform doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right, right. But, I'm struck by two things. One, you mentioned Pat Ryan, you mentioned DeLuzio, when they're talking about maybe they are part of a cohort that may have a problem with the lack of leadership. I should just, maybe it's coincidental, both vets, right? Like they understand, at the very least, they understand sort of like hierarchies and dynamics and, cohesiveness of mission. This other part about the lack of think tanks, like we even outside of the Democratic Party, there seems to be a tremendous lack of think tanks. Like, I don't know what happened to the Roosevelt Institute. I don't see stuff from them. Obviously, Think Progress wasn't always necessarily, or I should say Center for American Progress.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily ideologically aligned from it, but at least it was like I guess a milestone or sort of like some form of creating some type of structure within the Democratic Party for ideas, because, and I think we've had this conversation before, plan beats no plan, and there are no plans out there. There doesn't seem to be any place that is developing. I mean, frankly, during the Biden administration, most of that stuff was coming from the American Prospect. And no, but honestly, like where, there is no outfit that is turning out general policy, even to the point where you could say like, hey, that's too neoliberal, or that's, too corporate friendly. Like you can't even find that. So there seems to be
that's what the Democratic Study Group did. Right. And because it was a little more institutional, it had buy-in and the ability to disseminate that information, across the party. The problem is that we bring people into government mainly on the basis of how much money they have to fund their campaigns. And they don't have sort of a set of beliefs. They don't have very big staffs because the staffs have been gutted. They might have expertise on one solitary issue, but on everything else, they just kind of outsource it to, whoever's incoming information set keeps them in good standing. And, I think that the lack of sort of internal policy making and policy generating engines within the party have within the party structure have really weakened that ability. But even more so than that, it's the crisis right now has created a lot of freelancing strategies around, do we work with Trump? Do we try to troll Trump? Do we try to bait Trump? Do we resist Trump? And the fact that everyone's trying on a different pair of jeans means that the public is getting no impression that there's any opposition whatsoever.
Right.
Not an organized one, anyway.
Well, David Dayen, always a arguable pleasure.
Always a horror to be with you.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Do you have any anything optimistic? Do you think that there is any even nascent movement to sort of get some cohesiveness? And at the very least, I mean, part of the problem with a situation like this is there is no way to change course because there is no course, right? Like if there's a rudder and you're headed towards, a sandbar, at the very least, at one point you can say like, this is where the sandbar is. We need to turn around, go the other direction. But when you're rudderless, you have no you have no way to course correct.
Right. I'll try to offer something a little bit optimistic. So, at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, there was certainly more of an air of, more along the lines of the McConnell, we're going to resist and make this guy a one-term president. That was certainly kind of the focus there. But Chuck Schumer was talking about, well, maybe we can do an infrastructure bill. If he's serious about it, we can work together on that. So it took kind of a focusing action to kind of put that to the side. And the focusing action was the Muslim ban. I happened in 2017 to be getting off a plane at LAX at the time that was announced and protests were starting. So I actually was randomly, by circumstance, there at LAX at the international terminal when those protests spontaneously began. And it gave people a purpose, and it showed sort of from the bottom up almost to the leadership of the Democratic Party, the titular leadership, that, okay, this is what our people want, and this is what we need to do. There are going to be moments like that early in the Trump administration. They're probably going to be around mass deportation. There are already organizations that are getting ready to, be arrested, to, stand in between ICE and potential people being deported. There's going to be a lot of publicity around this. And there are going to be, and that's not the only focusing point. There are going to be other focusing points. When Trump really started to lose his energy and lose and really fall off on approval ratings in 2017 was after the passage of his tax cuts, which were very unpopular, very tilted towards the wealthy. And this time around are probably going to be even worse because they're going to be accompanied with all these spending cuts, where Elon Musk, the world's richest man, decides what government can't do in order to pay for his tax cut.
Right.
And so, that's going to be another focusing action, an ability for Democrats to have, one thing they can focus on and rally around. So there's going to be moments like that. It's not like Republicans are going to be able to capitalize on this chaos in the Democratic Party. They have a very thin majority in the House. They have a president who on day one will be a lame duck. There will be a lot of jockeying underneath him. They're already mad because of this year-end spending bill at Mike Johnson, who may not survive, really. Watch for that.
Yep.
And they have a lot of internal disagreement. So it's not like Republicans are well equipped to or positioned to capitalize on this, but Democrats need to figure this out and figure out who is driving the boat and where they're driving it.
This period of time when Trump has won, and I've been in this situation before when the Republican has won, but not do it in a position to do anything that people can respond to. And there's just a lot of recriminations is always the most frustrating and depressing of times. Although we'll see, it could get more depressing. But I love the idea of on day one, Donald Trump is lame duck. I hope somebody runs with that.
Sure.
David Dayen, always a pleasure. Thanks for all of your work in 2024. The Prospect continues to be a daily read of mine, and it's I'm so happy with what you've done with that magazine, and look forward to reading it more in 2025.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate all your work in 2024. Keeping this thing going, great stuff. And, I do want to say one other quick thing. We had a real tragedy happen at the Prospect. Our writing fellow, Jania Carey, 2 weeks before her 26th birthday, passed away suddenly, shockingly, last week. And so we're kind of dealing with and processing that shock. But I want to thank everybody for the kind words they've said to me and others at the Prospect. after we announced this yesterday.
And there's a GoFundMe too. I saw for
there
her
is,
family.
and there is GoFundMe for burial expenses for her family, and the Prospect's going to donate to that. But I've been overwhelmed by the generosity of people who have already given to that and helped her out, helped her family out. It's sad because, what I love about my job is I get to watch and help young writers develop. And so the fact that I'm not going to be able to see that with Janie is really distressing. And, we have the memory of her, and it's just a really terrible situation. It's hard to even form words around it, but, I just wanted to acknowledge that and to thank everybody. If you were out there and you got in touch with me or whatever, thank you very much.
All right, and we'll put a link to that GoFundMe. And really appreciate your time and sorry for your loss.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, bye-bye. David Dayen, folks, head over to the American Prospect. They do not have a paywall, but I would encourage you to support them if you can. All right, we're going to head into the fun half. Retro the Robot. Can I get a shofar for my dad who passed away last week? He taught me how to be happy while living in a hostile world. I'm sure you that quirky MFers genes had more to do with my autism than any vaccine. Miss you, Dad. All right. Oh, sorry. And El Conniption wants to know why I keep saying Starbucks.
Starbucks workers.
Oh, Starbucks workers?
Starbucks workers, Starbucks workers,
Yeah,
Starbucks workers.
I don't know. All right, folks. It's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. We are wrapping up, headed towards the end of the year. Got a couple more live shows before the end of the year. We'll take the opportunity on Friday to thank all of our members. Well, I'll do it today too. But it is our members, really, at the end of the day, that keep this show humming along and independent. And to the extent where they're successful, you keep us successful. And very often humble. Also, want to say thank you to Ronald Reagan for not only sending us a beautiful cherry assortment of cherry goodies, I guess. I don't know how to express
Harassing
that.
us with sweets.
I will also say that he also sent a gift. It's a game called You Can't Say which I took as a way of trying to train me after 20 years of doing this to not say as much. I'm looking forward to that. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Bradley, ESVN.
On ESPN on Monday, we rounded up the week of Week 15 NFL action and also discussed a little bit of our reactions to the Heisman Trophy ceremony and Travis Hunter winning, as well as some of Emma's thoughts on who the Giants may get in the upcoming NFL draft. YouTube.com/ESPN show if you'd like to catch up on some of our prior streams and clips. And we'll be back tomorrow to give you our top 3 picks of the week before we go on our little break. So YouTube.com/ESPN show, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Matt.
Left Reckoning last night. We had Matthew Sitman on of Know Your Enemy and Dissent Magazine talking about Clinton's, Trump's victory. And then we also talked about the AOC Connolly thing a little bit. And in the post game, we talked about AI. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to support us.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are